Check out this photo. It features all the stars of Russian painting: Repin, Kramskoy, Polenov, Surikov, Shishkin, and Bryulov. What are they planning, and why did they gather together? While Impressionism was breaking the code of the art world in France, a revolution just as significant was taking place in Russia. This revolution would be carried out by 14 great Russian artists who founded the Peredvizhniki movement, which marked the beginning of the golden age of Russian painting. Just like in France, in Russia, academicism had been in charge for many years, only in our case under the watchful eye of the Imperial Academy of Arts. In the early 1860s, Russia began Alexander II's great reforms. This incredible man completely changed the face of Russia by carrying out extremely painful but long overdue reforms. In a country where by that time slavery still existed, called serfdom, he abolished it. He abolished serfdom. In 1861, he carried out the Zemstvo reform and began modernizing all other spheres of the state's life, including the Imperial Academy of Arts in St. Petersburg. It must be said that by that time, the artistic environment in Russia had developed exactly the same situation as in France. Young and talented artists were yearning for freedom, which was strictly suppressed by the Academy. Classicism and academism dominated the art world in Russia, and this meant that only the depiction of something sublime, battle scenes, mythological or religious subjects was considered true art. Depicting real life or realism in paintings was considered unworthy, mundane, and too down to earth. Why waste time on something we all see every day anyway? But the terribly poor and backward condition of the peasants gave rise to a new movement among the Russian intelligentsia, which became known as Narodnichestvo. Its idea was that Russian culture depended too much on the West, practically copying it, as did the intelligentsia. To remember its roots and form its identity, it must connect with the people, understand their pain, and enrich each other culturally through interaction. The people, workers, and peasants, as the largest, grassroots, but driving force of Russia, began to be seen not as something unworthy, but as part of the culture and strength of the Russian people, as a source of the country's cultural identity. The Academy of Arts, however, rejected populism, demanding only images and scenes that had already been painted countless times by many artists. Every year, the Academy held a competition among graduates for the Grand Gold Medal. The Academy students had to paint a picture on a set theme for the competition. Only the most talented students, who had already received the small gold medal, were allowed to participate. For success in painting, winning the competition, and receiving the Grand Gold Medal, they gave a magnificent prize: a full 3-year stay in Italy, and such practice abroad at the state's expense, amounting to 1,500 rubles per year. For comparison, the other students received the 10th rank and could enter service with a salary of 135 rubles per year. In other words, winning the competition provided invaluable opportunities for any young person, and Sweat is developing another Scandinavian story. They were expected to spend 24 hours in isolation to finish a sketch, which would then be approved or rejected for the final work. However, the young medalists, having absorbed populist ideas, all requested permission to choose their own topics and paint real life. They were outrageously refused by the academicians, so all 14 withdrew from the competition, protesting the Academy's century-old rules. And so, the young artists disrupted the competition in the most scandalous way, and this outrageous escapade was called the Revolt of the 14. However, after leaving the competition, the artists also received an order to vacate their places in the Academy's dormitory, which also provided them with studios. Finding themselves nearly homeless, they chose to face life's hardships together and rent an apartment. That year, Chernyshevsky's popular book, What is to be Done, was published, detailing life and organization in a sewing cooperative. And inspired by the book, the young rebels came up with the idea to organize the first artist cooperative in Russian history. They also developed the charter of the cooperative, according to which everyone had to contribute 10% of their sales to the organization's treasury. But most importantly, they were not to have any relations with the hated academy. Ivan Nikolaevich Kramskoy was chosen as the head of the cooperative, the main ideologist of art cooperation and the most active supporter of independence from the academy. At first, it was difficult, but gradually, the talented artists began to receive one commission after another, and after a few years, the cooperative turned into a pretty good business. They relocated to central Moscow and bought a camera, enabling them to photograph the imperial family. These portraits were highly sought after and provided a steady income. After 5 years, the cooperative's capital hit 10,000 rubles. This was the first independent financial success in the Russian art world. Previously, artists couldn't imagine acting without the Academy of Arts, but the first step is always the hardest. Plain greed undermines the organization. Not all artists were equally successful, and those who earned well found it unfair to support the others, so they started hiding their income, much to the outrage of their less successful colleagues. And in 1870, something outrageous happens. One of the members, Dmitriev Orenburgsky, secretly secured the support of the Academy and managed to get himself a 3-year pension in Italy. When he found out about this, Kramskoy demanded that the traitor be expelled from the Artel, but since the Artel would also lose the income of a very successful artist, no one except Kramskoy supported this idea. Upset by his fellow Artel members' lack of principles, Kramskoy leaves and without its leader, the Artel quickly dissolves. A few years before leaving the Artel, Kramskoy unexpectedly organizes his first successful vernissage in Nizhny Novgorod by chance. The idea that art can be exhibited and sold across Russia, not just in the capitals, inspires the artist and his associates. Meanwhile, populism and critical realism grew stronger, urging a move away from lofty, soulless topics unrelated to real life, and to pay attention to the life of the people and the world around them, and the most genuine people live precisely in the provinces. That's why artists came up with the idea of bringing art directly to the eyes of their target and immeasurably vast audience living all across Russia. And they decided to organize a traveling exhibition of works of art that would journey through the cities of Russia and introduce its people to the most advanced ideas in painting. The very essence of the exhibition gave rise to the name of the organization responsible for this bold experiment, the Association of Traveling Art Exhibitions. Soon, all its members would be known as the Peredvizhniki, totaling 15. And although not all of them came from the Artel, the constellation of these names will amaze you. Vasily Perov, who at that time was 36 years old, Alexei Savrasov was 40, Ivan Shishkin was 38, Ilya Repin was 26, Nikolai Gay was 39, and Vasily Polenov was 26. Viktor Voznetsov was the youngest at 22 years old, and his brother Apolinary Voznetsov was 37. Vasily Surikov was 23, Arkhip Quinzi was 28, Vladimir Makovsky was 24, and Konstantin Makovsky was 31. And of course, Ivan Kramskoy. He was 33 years old. Later, Isaac Levitan, then 10, and Valentin Serov, who was only 5, would join them after the association was founded. We will definitely discuss the works of the most prominent among them. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The organization's charter is being developed with lessons from the Artel, requiring all decisions to be made by voting. And instead of 10% like in the Artel, only 5% of the artist's earnings are contributed to the common fund, plus income from ticket sales. The mission of the association states, the association aims to organize traveling art exhibitions in all cities of the empire, to provide residents of the provinces with the opportunity to become acquainted with Russian art, to foster a love of art in society, and to make it easier for artists to sell their works. The last financial issue was actually listed first in all the drafts, but later it was moved down. Therefore, it would be more honest to call these traveling exhibitions an exhibition fair, so that we don't forget that the main goal of the community, essentially a cooperative, was still to sell paintings and earn money from entrance tickets, while the lofty mission successfully and organically gave this enterprise its meaning. The association was no longer conceived as a rebellion. They wanted to turn it into an official commercial and creative organization. All required documents were submitted to the authorities, and the community's status and charter were registered. Every association member had to paint at least one picture annually for the exhibition, with Russia in all its sometimes grim diversity as the theme. The artists aimed to show the real life of the country, not Greek gods unknown to most of Russia. It was supposed to resonate with recognition in the hearts of provincial residents who had never encountered art before. A simple journey from Petersburg to Moscow by horse would take 5 days back then, and to get to Kiev, it would take a week and a half. That's why metropolitan art almost never reached the outskirts, and this business and cultural idea seemed quite workable. The first exhibition opened the very next year, in 1871, in St. Petersburg, in the same building of the Academy of Arts. Exhibition admission was 20 kopecks except Mondays when it was 1 ruble. A total of 80 works were exhibited there, and all of them were different from what the Academy usually showed. There were no battle scenes or Greek myths. The exhibition's paintings offered a glimpse into real modern Russia, showing its strengths and weaknesses. And the astonished viewers and critics, who had never seen anything like this before, were delighted by the novelty and sincerity of the paintings. Initially believing the Academy organized the exhibition, newspapers published praise, and St. Petersburg residents flocked to see it. A special success at the exhibition was enjoyed by the well-known painting by Savrasov, "The Rooks Have Come Back." It was at that time that it was shown for the first time. But even before the exhibition began, 46 works, half of the entire show, were purchased by a single patron. But more on that a little later. The first exhibition earned the association 4,000 rubles. Just 5% from sales and ticket proceeds. By comparison, the Academy's exhibitions earned just 5,000 rubles, with artists receiving nothing. Everything went to the imperial treasury. The startup succeeded, and the exhibition was held 3 more times at the Academy building. But soon the academicians, feeling threatened by unexpected competition and declining visitors, distanced themselves from the Peredvizhniki and banned their exhibitions from their building. They thought this would sober up the public, but it was too late. Within 4 years, the Peredvizhniki became nationally famous, with their exhibition traveling to Moscow, Kiev and Kharkiv, where they faced no competition. Every such visit from the capital city of St. Petersburg caused a huge stir, and all the provincial elite considered it their duty to visit the exhibition, even if they didn't understand anything about art, filling the association's pockets with ringing rubles. The charter stated that at year-end, all Peredvizhniki got dividends, and the capital was invested in profitable ventures to grow. The association became not just a community, but also an extremely successful commercial enterprise, the first in Russian history to be independent from the Academy and at the same time financially successful. This was crucial because it let the Peredvizhniki ignore financial concerns and not worry if their bold or controversial paintings would sell, and to paint however their soul wished. While in France the Impressionists had to wait 30 years before they achieved financial success, the Peredvizhniki gained financial freedom almost immediately. And this dramatically influenced the boldness and scale of the paintings, which now make up the golden fund of Russian painting. During these years, Russia, like Europe, was experiencing a major industrial revolution, bringing new technologies, factories, manufactories, and especially railroads across the country. Alongside the rise of a wealthy merchant industrialist class, many became patrons and fueled artists' financial success. The Industrial Revolution and railroads allowed paintings to be safely transported by train for the first time, instead of hauling fragile frames through the mud in carts. In the provinces, local merchants and nobles were buying up paintings from the capital like hotcakes. But to the great disappointment of the provincials, the most talented paintings were already marked before they reached the provinces. Most often, before the sales even began, the paintings were bought by none other than Pavel Mikhailovich Tretyakov, a Russian magnate, philanthropist and collector of Russian art. He had close ties with the association and was given the right to view each new collection first. He was often criticized for buying masterpieces of Russian art at low prices, and in a way, that was true. On average, he acquired paintings for only 500 rubles, but due to the volume, he became the largest and most important sponsor. When the Association of Traveling Art Exhibitions was founded, he was already 38 and had successfully expanded his inherited weaving and spinning business. He had bought art for 20 years, and after founding the association, his collection grew rapidly by 40 to 50 paintings each year. And in 1874, right in the center of Moscow, he built a gallery for his growing collection, which he would open to the public in 1881. He always intended to donate his collection to the city, and he did. In 1892, the gallery was named the City Art Gallery of Pavel and Sergei Mikhailovich Tretyakov. He was named an honorary citizen of Moscow. And the second major client of the association was Emperor Alexander II himself, whose collection, largely consisting of paintings by the Peredvizhniki, you can now admire at the Russian Museum in St. Petersburg. The association lasted for almost 50 years, until 1923, outliving all the Tsars the Academy, which was abolished in 1918, both revolutions in Russia and the First World War. During its existence, the association organized 47 traveling exhibitions in 12 cities of Russia, which had never before seen Russian art, especially contemporary art. Meanwhile, exhibitions of unsold works toured smaller towns. Of the century, they even began to reach the most remote villages. Here are just a few masterpieces, undoubtedly familiar to you, that were first shown to the public at the Peredvizhniki exhibitions. I will definitely tell you more about many of them, so don't forget to subscribe. The Peredvizhniki Society became the starting point of free thought in painting and marked the beginning of independent art associations, which soon Abramsovsky Circle, Blue Rose, Jack of Diamonds, Supremus, Utvrditeli Novogo Iskustva, and more. The society carried out exactly the same revolution as the Impressionists did in France, overthrowing the total hegemony of academicism and opening up opportunities, especially financial ones, for those who craved experimentation and discovery. The Peredvizhniki, driven by the same motives as the Impressionists, took a different path, focusing on meaning rather than painting technique. And although they later adopted many of the Impressionists' ideas, the uniqueness and originality of Russian painting would become a true mark of quality and give rise to incredible artists. Korovin, Goncharova, Serebriakova, Kandinsky, and even Malevich. And we will talk about all of them with you very soon. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Bye everyone.